Yo, it's Johnny King with another episode of the Becoming Kings podcast. Yo, I'm so excited to have a good buddy here on the show today, and I think you're in for a treat because I've talked about on this show, obviously, that I have been powerfully influenced in a great way over the last 13 years with pretty much always having a coach who coaches me. But now here's an example of a coach who sought me out. So my buddy Zach is a client, but I learn as much from him as he probably learns from me, and it's a very cool symbiotic relationship. So thanks for being on, man.
Thanks for taking me on all the way around, man.
Yeah, 100%. But you have such a fascinating story. When we initially sat down for coffee half a year ago, whenever that was, 4 or 5 months ago, man, you were telling me about who you used to be, and I can't fathom you being that guy, because you've come so far. And that's funny how, like, someone who's lost a ton of weight and they're like, oh yeah, I was 100 pounds heavier, and you're like, what? I'm not connected with that older version of you. I can only see the healthy version of you. But your story is pretty fascinating, which is why I wanted to get into it. Because like I said, you have a viewpoint on life that's different from mine, and that I've learned so much from. And that's why I was like, man, I want to have you on the podcast and really dig into this, because I do feel like a lot of guys that I talk to have a story that resonates with what you've been through. And now you've become a coach and you're helping guys. You're paying it forward as well, which is pretty powerful. So I want to get into all the good stuff. But again, thanks for being here. Maybe you can just touch on some of the high points. Tell your story, who you are, and kind of where it began. If you don't mind, we can kind of dive into the
Let's get deep, man.
Story. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, like the weight loss story of 100 pounds lighter. If you saw me naked, you'd see the stretch marks, from spiritually, I mean,
spiritually, emotionally.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm born and bred here in Denver, and I know you're in Denver too.
Yep.
And I had this, pretty great upbringing, great parents, great family. My dad was a hockey guy from Canada. And I pursued hockey, and I pursued, high level academics, and achieved left and right. Ended up at the University of Denver, playing hockey, for the varsity team. We won a national championship my freshman year. And I literally was named the most outstanding senior of the school. My last year there, dean's list and one of the editors of the newspaper. Like, I just was like this, high gear kind of guy. And then I got out of school. What's that?
You're the big man on campus.
Well, kind of. I wasn't like the big guy in the team, but I did everything else. People are like, is he compensating for something? It's a shortage of ice time, causes shrinkage.
Right.
And so, I was like, man, so I got out of school, and everybody was like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Because I had the kind of persona and now resume that I could do anything. And what I ended up doing was running my life completely into the ground, slowly but surely over the course of the next 6 or 7 years, via alcohol. That was as hard as I was going in school. As soon as I came out, I had this big hole inside of me from the time I was very young, that I was like, what is this about? And why do I feel like I'm in trouble all the time? Why do I feel like I'm not good enough all the time? I'm just going to achieve to make sure that if anybody looks at me, they're going to be like, oh, this kid is not just normal. He's extra. He's got something extra. So to try and convince myself that maybe if I portrayed that, maybe it could become true. Society, and probably I was being provided maps about how to find out what your life is really going to be all about, what you personally would want your life to be about. But if that was really, I was looking for it, and I did not stumble across it. I had great coaches, I had great teammates, I had great people who, boosters, housing people that I lived with, as I was on my journey.
Yeah.
And we had great facilitators that came in. University of Denver, we're, blue chip school, winning national championships kind of thing. We had unbelievable people come in and speak with us. But I got out of school and I fell flat on my face. And some of the signs started to come in there during my time at school. I got suspended my senior year from the hockey team over a resentment issue, essentially. He's not playing me enough. He doesn't think much of me. Failing to see the bigger picture. And so I really think like the metaphor I'd use is like I was going through this amusement park, and I was like, if I get on these rides, it's going to make me a sick person, but I want to go on these rides, and I want to bang 100 girls. The way I would say it to myself, and I really believe this, was I want to fall in love 1,000 times, well, I did, and I didn't sleep with 1,000 women, but I did have a lot of numbers, in terms, they didn't always fall in love with me back, kind of thing. So I kind of went in that pursuit after college, and there was an abortion involved. My college girlfriend, I had several of them, so I think I'm keeping anonymity here, but one of them was, there was an abortion involved, and and there was some part of me that was like, I'm supposed to be really selfish for the next few years, and there's just no way I can have a kid in tow. And she was amenable to that. And it was like, I knew that I was going to hate myself for it, but I couldn't resist the carnival, and so I pursued the carnival. And I mean, so it was late nights, and I didn't even know how to talk to women after college. It was like, I was on the hockey team, so they would talk to me, so I learned to drink really after college, after I was an athlete. But the sick stuff was already there. The resentment, the why not me, the victim mentality of like, I'm getting looked over, it's somebody else is screwing me over, kind of thing. And I was lucky to get out of it alive, so long story short, in my early 30s, I finally, I have a family history of, alcoholism and addiction, and by the grace of God, pretty much everybody in my immediate family has found the 12 steps. And I mean, like, it's this fringe. So I grew up around it. My dad was sober growing up, but he didn't really hit it hard until I left home at 16, and he was just retiring, and he started doing more meetings and sponsoring guys and really living it. And, like really getting in touch with this really great spiritual self, that's so good that you wouldn't want to dirty it up with a drink or with diminishment or delusion at all. So I saw that these things worked, but by then I was really way too smart for that kind of thing. I was like, I thought I knew what the 12-step rooms were and those fellowships, but man, luckily it got so bad for me at one point where I switched to weed for the last like 6 weeks or so. I was able to get off of booze, but I needed weed as kind of like almost like a rehab, like a weed hab kind of thing. And but then I realized I was doing the same exact thing with weed, and I was like, why isn't life going better for me? It's supposed to. I don't think I deserve it to, but like, I'm going to die if I keep doing this. I'm going to do something balls to the wall. I was doing hockey in school, balls to the wall, and then it was booze and women, and now then it's weed, and I was like, I need something else to grab a hold of, or I'm gonna fucking die.
Right.
And I knew that regardless of what I thought of myself, and maybe it would be relief to have that kind of thing, there was enough pain in my life at that point where I saw my family, and that was like my the thing that kept me stable, when I was getting the spins, and I was like, they would be devastated if I left, and so I know that regardless of what and all the stuff that your programming does, you're a piece of shit, you're not good enough, you should die, the kind of things you've done, it doesn't specify what it is that I've done. I had to dig into the work to do that, to find those things out, and they're so silly. It's like, but yeah, to get to a place where I was able to go to an AA meeting and say, I don't think I want to belong here, but I think I might need to try this out for a bit, just to see, because look, I'm going crazy. I can tell I can't keep my lies straight of who I am to each person. I have no idea who I am. Like, I didn't even know that. But I can't keep my lies straight anymore. And I think alcohol and weed is involved. And I think I'm just going to skip to another thing if I don't get in there and get underneath this stuff and find out what's really going on. And
Yeah, like you're in a downward spiral or a death spin, if you will, and
exactly.
you're not sure if you can pull out of this.
Oh my
But
God. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Well, you spoke of your dad, but what was your relationship with your old man and your mom growing up? Good,
Great.
different?
Actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so they probably, they didn't have they both came from, my dad came from a working class, poor Canadian family. My mom came from kind of like a kind of a richer family in Cherry Hills. And her dad was built St. Mary's High School. He was a builder, construction company, but he was a drunk. And so, so she grew up in that alcoholic household, big Irish Catholic family with a lot of tension. And but they found each other, and I think it was kind of like marrying each other's parents kind of thing. And
Yep.
they loved each other for what they knew love to be. And then they were able to, my dad stopped drinking because he had cirrhosis. I was born. I got two big sisters. So they saw him a little bit drunk sometimes. I never have. It was before I was born. But he was dry, as they call it. Like, he wasn't changing at all. He was the same miserable guy that a few beers would actually kind of sweeten up a little bit, a few dozen beers or whatever, but he couldn't have alcohol or he'd be like violently ill. So my mom was like, I'm done with this guy, and met an amazing human being. Shortly after that, my stepdad, who I just had him on the first episode of my podcast today that I filmed, and he's this incredible guy. And yeah, so we really lucked out in that. But because of, my dad took that and was like, I need to go and get help. Like, I can't stand myself either. No wonder she left. And I need to go to a place where I can figure out a way to have a better relationship with myself, or I'm going to go crazy. And I got these 3 young kids, and what am I doing? And so he doubled down on the 12 steps and being like, okay, maybe I'm sicker than everybody. And that surrender led to everything, in my family to kind of start to get healthy. My mom ended up having some issues. She went through a 12-step program. My stepdad has been through a 12-step program, and both of my sisters. And yeah, like, so it was it was a child-centered divorce. We do one Christmas still, like, everybody comes together.
Wow.
My dad makes jokes about, how it all goes, it's, and so, like, that's like a great outcome compared to what it could have been. And yet I think I picked something up in there along the way. My earliest memory was, I realized my parents weren't in love with each other anymore. And I knew it. But I was 2.5, and 6 months later, when they finally separated, I think I took responsibility for it or something. And, like, I had some kind of limiting belief, like, maybe I don't deserve to be alive, but I can't die either. So I need to figure out, I need to be a step ahead of the next thing. So I really tried to figure out, I think, why this happened, and then make sure I knew everybody's secrets, and like, so I could help them not fall apart, is really how I thought about it. So that set me on a path to being a life coach. I didn't know it at the time, and I didn't even know it, a couple of years ago, but it's a strange thing to become one of these things,
Yeah, 100%. But it comes out of the wounding that of your past, right? A lot of times it's desire, and same with mine in terms of becoming a life coach. But it's pretty powerful. So you think that initial wounding, 2.5, 3 years old, from your parents splitting up, was where a lot of this insecurity and victimhood came from?
I think so. That's the only thing I can make sense of it with. Like, every good limiting belief is usually like 90% true. Like, if you want to tell a good lie, you got to lead with the truth. But then there's this like rotten piece on the inside, and it's like it passes all the BS detectors internally, but it just rots you from the core. I think it was along those lines. I'm not worthy of love. Love would never lower itself for me. So I need to earn my keep if I'm going to stick around, because I can't leave because it'll hurt people, but I'm going to need to earn my keep and go crazy achieving and stuff, and along the way, there were other like I vandalized when I was a teenager. I got caught stealing. I stole all the time before I got caught. I had all these things that kind of showed I was living this dual life, and luckily, it didn't, luckily, I don't even know. It didn't get me off the path to being, to have this, you know, it was a Division I hockey player, you know, scholar athlete, you know, kind of thing. But there were hundreds of times that I could have totally derailed it. And I didn't have drugs and alcohol around. That was a godsend, or else maybe I really would have derailed all of it and maybe not survived. I barely survived as it was, you know, nearly drank myself to death hundreds of times, you know.
Well, and I feel like that what's great about your story, well, not great, but I think it's fascinating, is that I do talk to a lot of guys, and similar to my own story, where they didn't have much relationship with dad. You know, they didn't have great mentorship. They didn't have great coaches. They didn't have, there was obviously a massive void. And then when I talk to you, you're like, no, my childhood was great. I had, you know, dad, stepdad, mom, this, like, a lot of, but it goes to show that even if things look good on the outside, there can still be that rotten core, which isn't the essence of true you. It just was something that was planted in you, a limiting belief, like you said, or a toxic belief when you were a little guy, right?
Mm.
But that, when it wasn't handled, mushroomed into, you know, self-destructive behavior, right?
Well,
So,
and I sit in rooms with people regularly still today, you know, where, I mean, they talk about the worst of the worst types of things happening to them,
mm,
you know, and then they also survive because of this freaking miracle of the steps and, you know, a group of people who would facilitate you going through it. You know, but I'm like, oh, I had a divorce, you know, child-centered divorce where we got 2 Christmases and everybody loves each other still. And, you know, it's like, you almost feel bad, but it's like, no, this thing affects, you know, the spiritual dis-ease, the lack of really knowing who you are, not feeling right, feeling like a square peg in a round hole. It's almost universal. I mean, I would say it must be universal, but there might be some unicorns out there.
mm-hmm.
I just, so many, I mean, so many of the people I talk to, both in those rooms, but then now, you know, clientele wise, it is very common that they've had, you know, at least at least a strain with one of their parents. If not, they didn't even have a relationship with one, you know, or they died early, or there's a lot of other terrible things, but you know, it really begins at home. And so it's like, where are my models?
Right.
You know, and I, you know, I thought I only had 2 choices, you know, and which is a dilemma. 2 choices is a dilemma,
Mm-hmm.
which is either, you know, like, be a school teacher like my mom, or be a school teacher like my dad, you know, and and I was like, well, and I tried things like that, and it just felt like prison, you know. It was, you know, my dad was a hockey coach, so I tried that. That's really kind of, you know, I loved working with people. You know, it also was a great career to be a drunk in. You're at the arena around, you know, breathing fire breath on kids, but they don't know. They're like, you smell like my uncle, you know. Like, he's probably a cool guy.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
Exactly.
yeah. So it was like I was limited. I thought that was the only choice, where, you know, choice is, there's at least 3 options.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is like, well, who seems like the happiest person, you know, who interests you the most, and what are they doing for a living? You know, and that's really kind of where it doesn't matter when you ask yourself those questions or under what circumstances,
Right.
you can start going in that direction anytime. You know, I mean, I'm 38, and, you know, I feel like I've got this whole new life in front of me, because I know that I have a calling, and so many people don't even know that they probably have a calling. Um, you know, there might be some clues. There's always clues. But then to be able to know what my calling is, and then to actually do it as a career, where I get to, like, I get to do it all day, you know, is, I mean, it's incredible for the most part, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's sometimes hard to get clear. I think a lot of people do feel that the pull, that heartstring of, like, a calling, and yet they have no idea what it be, nor do they feel like uh, they could even grab a hold of that string if they even wanted to, you know,
Right.
because, to your point, they're such a victim to, and this is, again, it's not like, um, well, I won't even go down that tangent, but I was like, they're such a victim to their self, you know, loathing, their self deprecating, uh, you know, behavior and self-talk, that they would never be able to fully believe in themselves to even find that purpose, right? And it kind of sounds
Mm.
like you were very much there as well, where, like, you took on such of that, like, I'm such a piece of shit that there's no way in hell that I could ever be someone that helps shape the lives of others. because look, I can't even, I had all this, it's almost like because of your childhood and things were pretty damn great, that you buried yourself even more because you were like, how did I fuck up so much when I should be such a better person? Because look at all of the abundance I have, let's say, and the love and the parenting. But I think that just goes to show why I love your stories, that like we have to let go of that judgment and the story we have about like why we should or shouldn't be dealing with the issues that we're dealing with. Like if you're dealing with issues and you feel stuck, or you feel a sense of unworthiness, or like you are a victim, like things have got to change. You just have to accept of where you are right now and start to shift in a good way. So having said that, that was going back to your story. That was that moment for you when you kind of went in there and was like, I don't know if I should be here, or but I can tell this is not going in the right direction. So maybe at least I'll take this in. Was that kind of one of the defining moments, or did that still take some more dominoes falling before you finally were ready for that 12 steps and the lessons you learned through that?
My first meeting was really kind of the whole ball of wax, where really the center point of like this new chapter, or the book end. And it was to just get there, to have, I did not have a lot of humility,
Yeah.
what I thought humility was like pridefully beating the shit out of myself, which is not humility. That's pride. It's just the underbelly of pride.
Right.
And so I thought I licked alcohol. I was like, oh, it's been 6 weeks without a drink. I'll never drink again, but I came to see, and actually there was an intervention for somebody close to me that I care about that I showed up to, and that was the first day I was sober. Like that's my sobriety date, which is coming up here in January.
Mm.
Like, and the thing about that too is like I didn't remember until I was like 7 months in meetings, and like I remember I was sitting in a meeting and somebody said something, and I was like, huh? 'Cause you hear these amazing stories told, these amazing truths that you're like, I can't believe somebody is saying that out loud. This is incredible. I mean, it's worth the dollar that they suggest that you put in the pot.
Yeah.
And I remembered 7 months in that I tried to smoke weed. I ran myself out of weed on purpose, but I tried to smoke weed that first night sober. Like I broke into a friend's apartment. I knew he had a vape pen. I watched a YouTube tutorial on how to like MacGyver a cell phone charger and like recharge this dead vape pen with weed vapes in it. And I was hitting this thing like it had the cure to cancer in it, man. And it didn't hit. And I was white knuckle. I was like 2 a.m, and I was in a fight with the girlfriend at the time. And, I was just a crazy person, absolute crazy person. Cause all the stuff I was using to suppress was all coming, it was gone. So all the stuff was coming back out, and it was so loud in my head. And, the research I've done since then points, your brain is unhealthy and it's misfiring. You got parts that are active that are not supposed to be active. You got parts that are supposed to be active that are not. You've got not enough blood flow. And it sounds like you've got a concert hall of assholes just screaming at you, the ring of fire, they call it. It's like your whole brain is on fire from too much activity. So I didn't have stuff to put those things to night. And, so I didn't even remember that for 7 months that I was taking credit. I was like, oh yeah, I'm the man. I got this. I'm going to like fly through these steps, and I'm going to be, teaching this stuff, to you guys, back to you someday. And it's I just continue. I don't even know how much credit I get, except for somehow I got myself to a ton of meetings, and something started to happen, and it's like, nobody's in charge, at those programs. Like they're literally like, it's just the steps and the principles behind them. And they're just left there for anybody. And they try not to change the literature from 85 years ago. And I'm going through this stuff, and I have a good brain when it's healthy. and I was going through this stuff, and I was having these massive experiences. And I was like, this is better than the booze. This is better than the drugs. It's better than the sex and the money and the power and everything I was pursuing. And I went hard, but it all started in that first meeting. I was sitting there thinking I knew what AA was, but I was like, I cannot take another night trying to do this alone. I will be I was writhing under the sheets with how much noise there was in my head. And so I'm sitting in that meeting and everybody's is telling this story about, I mean, they were telling me my story back to me. I was like, how do you know what's really going on? I thought it was an alien on this planet, like one of a kind, like not in a good way. And everybody's saying the same thing again and again. Yeah. And these are all like these crazy things. Like you don't hear these kind of stories. It's very rare for somebody to come in and then stay sober the whole time, which is what happened for me. I got a sponsor. I talked to a guy. He beelined it to me after the meeting. He became my sponsor. I got his phone number. I was trying to leave, before the prayer because I wasn't into any of that stuff. And that was the other thing. I'm looking up at the 12 steps and it mentions God and higher power. And I was like, God, no. Like that was my first prayer. Like, please, God, don't no. Like I forgot that I thought I knew AA and or the 12 steps. And I didn't even remember that like it's a spiritual program, and they do use that word because if you that's the last word I was ever going to contend with. Yeah. And I was at that place in life where it was time to contend with that. And I just made a deal with myself, which was, and I think that this would apply. This could be a model for other people in terms of trying something new if something's not going right for them. And I think it works for anything. I concluded that my best thinking had got me where I was sitting, completely miserable. That it wasn't my thinking that was going to do it. I saw that people around me had been where they got my trust because they told me about what it was like, and I absolutely believed them. A lot of it was worse than what I experienced, but it was similar inside. And I was like, I'm going to try this as hard as I can. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in any of this stuff. I don't believe it's going to happen to me. And if God was real, it would not be interested in me and what I'm bringing to the table, so I'm just going to do this as hard as I can so that when it doesn't work for me, I'm going to move out to a beach like I saw in a movie one time and I'll drink myself to death off the grid. And I'll love that because I've never gotten a drink like I really wanted, even though I halfway died almost all the time, almost every night. Yeah. I never just got to do it completely uninhibited without, responsibilities within a day or two. Right. So I was like, that's what I'll do, but I'm going to do this as hard as I fucking can and see what happens so that I can go out and say, well, hey, it doesn't work. I tried it as hard as I could. Mm-hmm. And every time I came to one of those crossroads where it was either drink or do the next thing that they suggested. And there was always another thing that you could do. You could call somebody, you could pray to a God you didn't believe in. You could read the book. You could go to another meeting. Like you could go help somebody. I just never ran out of those things to do. Mm. And there was parts you'd almost say like I was trying to relapse, through certain parts of the work, but it was a first, pull away of what was going on. And the stuff that I found underneath it, I was like, I can't believe this is hidden in the gutters of society. Mm. Thank God it's somewhere, but like I had this big, beautiful brain and I never used it to investigate what was really going on because I was not handed that toolkit. I got it in the 12 steps. And so, one of the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing today is like the people who are dying will end up in those places. They'll end up in the gutter. And before they wash away, sometimes they get caught on by these other people trying to catch them, in these meetings. And I was like, okay, this works for the biggest, like addictions. These are the worst things that people, and everybody has addictions, but like, these are like some of the most like measurably worst things that can ever happen to a person. Yeah. And yet it works for that. So why can't it work for somebody who's mildly depressed or, sick of being stuck on a couch watching Netflix, not even enjoying the shows, but just like, what's the next thing we haven't binge watched yet? Mm-hmm. Eating whatever, not pursuing the thing that they want, but being comfortable enough barely not to. So to me, I was like, that pain level does exist in everybody. And I want to tap into that,
I think that's what's to me fascinating about what we've talked about, off episode and during this, podcast as well, is just that like the 12-step program, there's such power in it. There's as you've described it to me, an underlying transformation system that not a lot of people actually know about unless you struggle with, some of these massive addictions. So for those people who And I feel like for a lot of my life, I was there where I could always go back and like, well, I'm not addicted to this, and I don't do this, and I don't do this, but I still was living a life that was so mediocre compared to what I know I felt like I had the potential of achieving. But I needed some type of system or uh, some way to kind of hack the knowledge of successful people, and ultimately it kind of led myself to Tony Robbins, and I know you're a huge fan as well. Um, but what do you feel like are some of those things that, even if someone's listening to this and they've not struggled with alcoholism, but they struggle with workaholism, right? Or they've lost that spark in their relationship, or they feel like um, they should be so much happier than they really are. What do you feel like are some of those bigger underlying principles of the 12-step program that you feel like are applicable to anyone and everyone?
That's a great question. I've really kind of been on that pursuit, and I feel like so I went. What I did after I had this huge experience in the 12 steps, and I started sponsoring other people through it. Not well, to be honest with you, at the early goings, because I was still not very healthy. I was so much healthier than I was, but I still had, I had terrible finances. I had a career that was not right for me. I was great at it, but I was stuck in it. I was getting out of a relationship that, gosh, she was a great human being, but we just did not click. As I started to get healthier, it was like we got into a sick relationship when I was sick, kind of thing, and I made it sick. So like my life was in like utter utter shreds, but there were a couple parts that had miraculously like come back from the dead. And so I was like, where else is this happening? Can I apply this? And my sponsor was helpful. There's other people that are helpful. You can go through the steps multiple times with people. They'll do it for free with those other areas, and I was like, okay, great. I want to see. Well, to be honest with you, this is another thing. Like I was about to take credit for it. Somebody in AA brought me to church, and I was like so anti-religious because I just had this huge spiritual awakening. I got to know a real interactive God of reality that was working on my behalf all of the time, forgiving me, loving me, not even seeing me in my faults, just seeing me completely whole and like giving me anything that I asked for, including like, boatloads of booze, but it was just like whatever I'd asked for, it was just like giving me these things. So I was like, what is Christianity? What is church? What does any religion have on me? I'm having this experience. I'm going to go and see what they're having over there. So I went in there, of course, just super pompous. And my friend was like, I was single and she was a hot girl. So that was all it took, and so I was in there and she was like, let's leave after the music or before the music. Cause I was like, good. Yeah. Christian music, terrible. Like never, I listen to it all the time now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah. And I was, and the preacher talked about, I was at Red Rocks Church. And for some reason, this is a Jesus church. It's a big church here in Denver. Maybe the biggest, second biggest. And the pastor was talking about Moses, not Jesus. And I was like, so I didn't know that they talk about Jesus every other Sunday, every, 65 million times. But
yeah.
And I was like, oh, Moses is like my sponsor. And, so I began to see that this was like another transformation system. And I was like, so I was getting it like intellectually, like, oh, because I got this big obsessive brain, and I was like, oh, it's the same thing. Okay, this is why it's successful. And I'm starting to, the parting of the seas was like the miracle of the 12 steps that leads you out of, insanity and slavery into your heart, into freedom, into love, forgiveness. And I was like, cool, I'll definitely come back here. And then for some reason we stayed for the first song, and this dude was talking. It was great music. I was not expecting that. It was a live band.
Yep.
And it was like talking about a love that overcame the grave. And again, like I'm very anti all this stuff, but I didn't want to hear the Jesus stuff. Like they're not smart people is what I was thinking, but this love that overcame the grave. I had this immediate flash back to a moment where I was drowning in a toilet one night about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years prior to that. And I was on drugs that night. which usually I was really not really a drug guy, like not the hard stuff, just a friend had it and I was like, sure. And because I was on drugs, because I really love to drink, I was able to drink like twice as much, which can kill a person, you know? And so all of a sudden about 4 a.m. I started like just puking. Like I was like, oh, I feel normal. But I had like alcohol poisoning. So I get into the restroom and yeah, and I'm like nodding off it, like, you know, like it's all hazy, but at some point in there, I go face forward into the toilet and I had this spiritual experience and I was somewhere else, you know, and it reminded me of, there's this scene in, I think it's the second Matrix, the original three, and where Neo had, like, the main character has this moment where he kind of, he has a huge spiritual experience and then he like dies or something, collapses, and he goes like, he's like in a coma, I think. And he goes to this like subway system. He's like in a subway, but no trains are coming. And he's like trapped in this subway. And that's where I was. I was in this subway type of thing, but there was something else there with me. And it was like, it was, I could sense that it felt all of the pain that I was feeling. And I was like, wait, like, wait, I know what this is. Like, is it over? Am I dying? Like, and it was like, I'm afraid so. And I was like, no. Like, I swear to God, I'm trying to be a good person. Like, I work with kids, like my family is going to be devastated. Like, it will destroy my family. You can't let this happen. And it was like, I'm afraid I don't have any power here. And I was like, no, like, and the next thing I know, I was getting pulled out by my buddy and, you know, came to and like coughed up this water. And he said I was like gray, you know, and so I don't know. I mean, I had no place to put that. So at the end of that thing, I was like, the insanity of where I was at, I was like, the next day I drank again, or the next night. And I was like, I'll just never do drugs like that again. You know, I'll just never do the powders. So anyway, I had that flashback while I was standing in church, like with a love that overcame the grave, like something was like something was fucking there with me, you know, like it didn't want me to die. It was fighting for me. It was feeling all of my pain for me. So I didn't have to, you know, and I never understood the metaphors of like this character of Jesus or anything like that, you know, and I just, it was never a three-dimensional figure, you know, and all of a sudden it was like, this is what at that moment, I realized that's what's happening in the 12-step rooms, a real living thing that's inside of you, that's with you, that's being crucified with your pain to save you from it, kind of thing, you know, and way more than like the average person I was encountering who claimed that kind of stuff. And, or at least so I thought, you know. So anyway, I'm just yapping at you right now, but this was like this whole, oh wait, this happens here. And I could go there and I could stand in the music and I went alone. Like that girl and I didn't go again. You know, she found her husband, you know, shortly after, which is great. But she brought me to that church and I started going and crying at that church regularly. And then my whole life started to change. And about 2 years later, I met my wife. You know, she was a member of that church. It was our first date. I didn't know that she was a member of that church. I took her to that church, you know, that's, you know, like that's a big 180 there.
Totally.
And then I started going to Tony Robbins after that. You know, after I got married, I was like, I left this super high paying job in Vail. It was like, you know, in the industry I was in coaching hockey, it's like a career get, you know, like once you get that, you don't want to give it up, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it was the right money. It was the right place. It was, you know, it had all this meaning. I'd given up dating. I'd given up I was trying to get off of like jerking off and all of this stuff. And then I met my wife. I was like, my wife was introduced to me, you know, and it was like, I would never, anyway. So all these things started to happen. And as soon as we got married, you know, I left that stuff. I knew it was the wrong, as soon as I got to the paramount of it, I was like, this is the wrong lane for me to be in. And I need to find myself again. And, and that's what led me to Tony Robbins. And, and then again, these big rooms where I was having big experiences with people just like me. And it gave me the permission to understand that everybody is going through this cycle. I was dying of it fast and these people are dying of it slow, and we want to fucking live.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I love the quote this right to your right. And for those of you that aren't watching the video here, it says a hero willingly confronts danger first in himself, then in the world, which is a lot of, obviously, probably why it resonates with you to put up in your house. But that is a lot of your story, right? Just diving into the danger from within. And now it's obviously something that you're supporting other people in
Yeah.
confronting.
Well, and it's not, it's like, it's more of like a call to being a hero. It's not like, hey, like, here's the hero. Like, that's really, it's more like an aspiration, you know? And when I do this work, strange heroic things happen. Sometimes even it seems like supernatural things happen. And I don't really know how to place that, except for I know that it happens. And, you know, and working with other people, walking with them in integrity as they're going through these practices of, you know, I mean, a lot of people have been doing this kind of work for a long time, but now we have all this information at our fingertips that, you know, it's the information age. And so if you don't have the information, you know, I think you age, I think is the way that goes. But you know, yeah. So it's like, I'm just on fire to get into this work. And I just see that I have an enthusiasm about it or something that I think helps other people walk through it too. Because it's daunting. It's terrifying, you know, to go and face those things.
It really is. And that's the challenge, is that there are, you know, for me, at least in my story, there's the initial ahas, the huge rocks. I was like, oh my gosh. But then it tends to be smaller and smaller rocks, you know. But there's always new things to focus on, new things to tweak and to improve and to and I think that's just maybe the human condition and the journey that we're all on, you know. And that's why I am a huge proponent of always having a coach, uh, and why I believe so much in coaching. And I think maybe you're the same way, because we all need support. We all need people to help look at our blind spots and be able to call us out on things or call us into growth and healing. And I think the 12 steps for you is a great place to start. And I think it's a great place to help lean on for those that, like we were saying before, aren't alcoholics or aren't, but they're just not happy. They're not really truly dialed into their greatest version of themselves, because that inner self-talk, that little voice that either chirps or, like you said, you say ring of fire, like just that whole chorus that screams at you can be so debilitating that it can rob you of a life of fulfillment, in my opinion, you know.
I have a question for you. Like, so in your work, like recently, you know, in doing the work, I was like, wait a minute, like there are some big rocks left in here, you know, and I'm years into this thing now, and I do it with other people. But yeah, like it was actually from a challenge that you gave me. And I was like, oh my God, of course I still have this thing in my bag. And I didn't even realize that I had been carrying it, you know. And like how good it feels to like get that up and out, you know, like, oh my God. And how strong, yeah, I mean, it's one of the benefits of like carrying around these things it makes you crazy strong, you know, from all that suffering that you've been enduring, and how good you feel when you can give it up. Have you ever had a moment like that where, like, yeah, you get the big rocks and then like the little ones, but where you're like, wait a minute, this is another big rock?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about it earlier this year for me, or I should say now last year, since 2022. We talked about it. I think something that a lot of guys really struggle with is that anger, that repression of the anger, and how that keeps us apathetic and numb. That was a major rock, because I've seen how that shows up. It's the nice guy tendencies, right? And then with the nice guy tendencies comes a lot of resentment, you know, and with the resentment then turns into anger, but I don't let the anger out, which then turns into numbness, and I'm either rageful or I don't give a fuck about anything. You know, I see that in that cycle of how that shows up in so many of my relationships over the years, to the point where just recently going out on a date, you know, a gal asked me like, well, why are you still single? And a lot of times I was like, oh, I'm just picky and all that stuff. Or I wouldn't even say that. I just like, I have high standards, when in reality, and this was the first time I actually shared it with someone, like, well, do you want the short answer or do you want the in-depth answer? And she's like, the in-depth. And I got to tell her that huge rock that my coach Christine and I really unearthed, which is what I challenged you on, is to let some of that anger out, is was what honestly was like, oh, and that really kind of came back to more of a mother wound that I didn't realize. I thought I had kind of handled all this stuff. So that's why I'll work with a coach. If it's a really good coach, I'll work for a coach for maybe a year to about 18 months. And then I usually need like a fresh perspective with a new coach.
Mhm.
So that's the beautiful part, is that I think people who, I don't know, honestly, the coaches that I have paid a lot for, they continue to give me, I mean, they're worth their money in gold, because they give me new perspectives to things that I thought I was good on. But as long as life's not going the way that I really would like it to, or I'm not as fulfilled as I like to, then there's more work to be done. So
Mhm.
that is, to answer your question, one of the bigger rocks that I've discovered more recently, that's been there my entire life. That if I had not stepped into that, man, I'd be running the same programs and probably continuing to mess up intimate relationships going forward. So that
Yeah.
was a pretty powerful one. And I think that's, again, the nice thing about being a coach and being coached, is that I then saw some of me in you, and vice versa, and be like, you know what, this might be it. And you were like, that, I think that is it, and I think that did start the cascade of you stepping up, and then going to some other personal development stuff that I suggested you doing, and working on your relationship with your word, your sense of integrity, right? Don't let me put words in your mouth, but then how that impacted your relationship with your wife and
Mhm.
friends, and it just starts to ripple out, right?
Oh, well, like, and I had this experience. I mean, I'll share it.
Yeah.
I caught myself. Yeah, you challenged me to go to this seminar that's right here in town,
Hmm.
and it's like a mom and pop kind of seminar. They're not like a big Tony Robbins, like laser disco light show, like condition you until 3 a.m. until you're just exhausted, and then they're like, now you got to be great.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is like, we're gonna be done at 8 because we are reasonable human beings, and
Yeah.
right here in town,
Yeah. Yeah.
word of mouth advertising, just
Yeah.
sensational. But there's this big Saturday night event that is kind of about like, how is it that you're doing life? You know, what game are you playing, kind of thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I and it's kind of a game that goes on, for, you're supposed to let it take you for a while. And in the middle of that, I went from that event to a Christmas party to pick up my wife and my baby daughter. I had dinner first with some of the folks, and then went over there, and I was supposed to grab food for my daughter Zaya. And my wife asked me, we have baby food, but she was just getting into like the real human food. And
Hmm.
so I was supposed to order something, and the service like wasn't super great, but like this lie started to brew. And I was exhausted at the end of this. And I was like psychologically, spiritually, like maxed, and
Tapped.
like seeing
Hmm.
ugly stuff. And like, and then in the middle of all of that, I got to this party to pick up my wife, and she's like, "Where's the food?" And I was like, "Oh, we ordered it, but it never came because the service was so bad. Like, there was a truth, like the service was not great. So there was something there. Every time I thought of it, the guy wasn't there, and it was, but it just like came out, and I was like quasi conscious that it was even being put together in preparation for that moment.
Hmm.
And the look on her face of like, not just disappointment that I didn't say that I would follow through on doing what I said for our
Hmm.
daughter,
Hmm.
but she knew that I was lying. I don't know if she's ever told a lie, as far as I know, and I'm a, former addict. So it was just, I had to lie to make sure nobody really saw me, because I'd have
Yeah.
to kill myself if she
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
And so like this little white lie, I went to bed that night without addressing it, thinking like, oh, I'll be fine. It's not a big deal. I've got a lot going on, you know.
Hmm.
Uh, and the next morning I woke up sick to my stomach.
Hmm.
And this little thought was like, oh, surely this couldn't be about this lie that you told. And so I was in the middle of this seminar, and I was able to like workshop that. And I got on the microphone in front of everybody, and I told them about it. And the persona that I had there, people were like impressed with me, and they were shocked that I would lie to my wife. And I was like, you know, that little white lie says everything that you need to know about me,
Yeah.
which is, I'm
Yeah.
terrified of what my wife would say if she, like, there's a fear underneath there of like, I'm really just a terrible human being, and I'm a taker, and I'm completely self-absorbed, self-centered. And as soon as she sees that, she's going to want to divorce me.
Mm.
And it's like this perspective, this program that just runs. And this is the terrifying thing that really came up, which is to me is like this big rock of like, I've got a program running when I'm not present, which is a lot of the time,
Right.
all the stuff that we do in coaching is a lot about being present,
Right.
or making something from the past present to deal with it and then move on from it. Right. And yeah. And so I had to go and take that to my wife and be like, I'm out of integrity with you. Because I'm out of integrity with myself. And there was other stuff involved. And so I came clean on every lie that I could think of. And it was nasty stuff, the stuff that I'm so afraid of her saying to me, like, you're a disgusting little pervert that is beneath lovability, and like that shit runs in my head. Like I got tingles as I said it, because there's something in there that is a poison that my body, that my being likes for some reason. So that was massive, so, and I think that being willing to be, so much of my life was a lie. I just had this fantasy that like, I could just be this person who had no secret anymore. Like I could just say it all out loud. I could talk about the abortion. I could talk about everything, in a way that it didn't have its hooks in me of that victim story anymore. Or victimizer story. Like I had moved to a deeper place of like, I just watch myself. I was a sick person when I had it. I was stuck in my personality with limited options. And now I'm like in that spiritual place more of the time, watching these thoughts come and go and not having to attach myself to things. And I mean, the relationship since then, Johnny, I don't think I've shared this with you because I think it's been a couple of weeks since we talked, but like the relationship that I have back with my wife now, like, first of all, she didn't divorce me. She stopped dead in our tracks. We were on a walk and she just came and held me, and yeah, I mean, and the closeness that we have now, like we're laughing again. It was like me cutting it short of like, it's like a governor on an engine, like it just was like, nope, once you hit 75, it just doesn't go, it just like slows you down, and I was not letting myself get to that really good stuff. And yeah, it's like I wasn't letting because it's like there was something deep down, and it was quasi conscious. Now that I can look back and see it, I couldn't see it at the time. It was like suppressing for fear. But now I can look back and realize like there were little micro decisions happening in all of those moments where I just was being a robot around her, instead of just being present with her, being with her, joking, busting her balls, letting her bust mine. It was like, I was not allowed to bust her balls because, well, I'm a dirty little piece of shit who, you know what I mean? And so just breaking that programming, but it's terrifying to discover that and to really witness your brain, your mind trying to shape a narrative for some historical reason, and where is this happening in my life? And fucking, so thank you. You are the money that I pay every time I get off a conversation with you. I'm like, how much value did I get? It's not just 100%, but it's like, what would I pay for this what does this open up for me? And having that experience of having this relationship with my wife, it is the best kind. I've never had anything like this, she hasn't either. Like we are so happy right now, and so thank you for providing value, and helping me keep it simple. I say at the end of a 35-minute diatribe, thank
No,
you,
it's
man.
awesome. You're so welcome. And you are the ideal client that I want to work with, because again, I've had plenty of clients who I have to ultimately fire, because they think that just throwing some money at a problem that I'm going to create magic for them. I'm like, no, like the amount of hero in you that is confronting your own inner danger and your own inner demons is really what really makes the value a tangible thing, right? So I think that's that really goes to anyone who's listening too, is like, man, you can't just expect to sit down and set a timer and meditate for 15 minutes a day, or to hire a coach and think that magic's going to happen. You have to be willing to go balls to the wall, like you say, in many regards, and go all in, be committed to your own personal growth. And typically that requires going into some of the scariest areas, which you did. I mean, you literally, you're like, she could divorce me on this, or she could leave me, and all my fears will come true. And that's what's so beautiful about the feminine, is that a lot of times in that willingness to be vulnerable and be transparent, they don't pull away. If anything, they step forward and hold you, and you're like, oh, thank God for this type of love. I don't even know if I'm worthy of this, but thank God, right,
Yeah.
for it. So, man, I give you the credit right back, because it takes a lot of strength and fortitude to be able to step into a lot of the shit that you've been doing. Because I know when we first started talking and thinking about working together, your marriage, your conversations, your integrity with yourself, a lot of those things were the things that we wanted to work through, and you're doing it, right? So
Yeah.
I have to give you the credit. I just asked you questions and let you run with it. So
Well, and there's a part of me that always fights that stuff. It's
yeah.
like, when I'm working through, what are my top 3 things that I want to work with?
Mm-hmm.
And like, I was thinking it was all about business and facilitating me so I could facilitate others better. And, but it was like, yeah, that extends itself to my marriage. It was like, something's up. And it was like, of course something's up,
Mm-hmm.
but it was like, I was putting that at number 3,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? And like, cause I didn't have the language for how to even put that into perspective, but like the superpower that you feel that you have when you're walking, when you're walking in integrity with yourself. There's some people out there that might be listening who maybe have told a lie, at one time in their life or so.
Right.
And when you're in integrity with yourself, when you're telling the truth about things that are, inconvenient, about everything, if you can, you get this self-approval.
Yeah.
And to me, I've had a couple moments in my life where I felt self-approval because of that, because I told some massive damning truth. I did the work to discover it, and then I told it out loud to a person I may have harmed,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't hit you immediately. It might take a day. You feel like you're walking out of that conversation about that big,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like you wake up the next day and you're like, what is all of this strength? You just feel like you're approving of yourself. And then this is the great thing: when you're in self-approval and alignment, like all of the things that you do when you're unhealthy, you just don't do those things. You're not seeking approval elsewhere. You're not going to chase it down from your wife and too many sorries and playing the nice guy and stuffing my anger because I owe her for all, her taking a short bus kid on, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know. It's commendable work that I was going to say you're doing, but that
You're doing.
yeah, it's just an amazing thing. It works. I still am baffled that life coaching is a thing and that it actually works,
Mm-hmm.
but of course it does. I'm shocked still that I'm doing this for a living,
Yeah.
but people want it and they need it, and it changes lives. The life coaching does,
Yep.
not me or you, but the work itself.
100%. I think that's exactly it. It's not so much about us as it is just asking the right questions and helping to guide, if anything, people to the truths that they really have already within themselves. But it's the limiting beliefs. It's all the other things that obviously detract or suck energy away from them being able to give their true gifts in life. And I think that's what it ultimately is. So many of these generational traumas and everything else that we take on, and who knows if that was a seed planted when you were growing up too, is like, oh, alcoholism, all this stuff, the 12 steps is all in my family. So maybe subconsciously it's just something like, yeah, I'm going to have to take this on myself. Who knows, right, where that seed was planted. But having the ability to work through this, who knows, right, in terms of how much this will continue to bless your marriage, your little one. Like, time will tell, but I can't imagine how it couldn't continue to bless the world massively. So the work that you've already done in yourself will help others 1,000-fold, 100%, just as it has for me, and me being able to support you and vice versa. It's that's why it's worth the work, I think.
It is, man. It is. Yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah.
Thank you for just doing this and committing your life to this so that I could have somebody to put myself in your hands and kind of say, I don't know how you're going to improve this thing. I've been trying my ass off alone,
Yeah.
and Yeah. Let's see if you can kick it a little further down the road. And then just, it's not even that game, you know, it's like just stripping something back that was just holding me back, you know. I would happily pay you, you know, 2 or 3 times as much. You know, you're probably undercharging me, and you do charge, you know, a steady amount, but like you're absolutely a million times worth, probably a million times that, you know. It's just like, yeah, just don't start out running my kicking coverage or whatever yet. Okay.
You're
I
good.
need you, man.
You're giving me a lot here just by spending your time with me and giving your gifts to my podcast listeners. So it goes both ways. But yeah, man, I appreciate it, and I think it's like I said, it's worth the work. And I think when we're doing it and we're focused on healing and showing up in the best ways that we can, we get to cross paths with people like each other, right? And that to me is worth all of it in its weight in gold, in terms of like, just being able to kick it and have amazing friendships with guys that are guys, and we can bust each other's balls while at the same time hold each other accountable to, you know what, like we can step these things up, you know, more in life, and being able to show up better, I think is really, really, really what the world needs right now more than ever, is good leadership and men and women and how they show up, you know. So healing's got to happen first and foremost before we can really lead and impact the world. So,
well, can I have one parting shot?
Yeah.
Which might be funny. So I got so excited in our last coaching conversation. I threw out this garbled, you know, thing to you, and you like ninja reassembled it and like gave it back to me in a way that was more valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so gleeful. I was like, it was a problem that I've been working on for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And I was like, bro, I love you. Like, thank you so much. It just came out. It was like, I didn't even think about it for like 5 seconds. Usually that's a premeditated situation. But yeah, but you did not return, you know, the ILY, you know, and I was like, strong move, strong play. Yeah. I just wanted to bring that up to you to, you know, be like, it's weird. It's out there. I haven't really talked with you since then. And I just want to say, you know, there's love there. And I'm very appreciative to you.
Yeah. Well, I love you too. And I think one of those things that
there it is.
That's where it is.
That's what I was really in it for.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to, it's funny that you say that, because I remember that. And I think sometimes it's, I think it's one of those things that I've been focusing on, which is just receiving, you know. And so much as that, it's just can be a hip reaction, like, hey man, hey bro, I love you too, bro, you know, like, see you, have a good day, versus being like, thank you, you know. And I knew I'd have my opportunity to express my gratitude for you, for sure, you know. But I think
now it's in public
things, yeah, well, hey, it's out into the ethers.
I swear this is not like a self-approval, like seeking your approval. Maybe it is. I don't know.
No,
I got work to do.
Good. It's always good to have healthy bromances, right?
Totally, so, man.
I think it's good. But no, I mean, I think, and I said it to you, not in as many words, but in terms of like, on your graduation night or whatever that was Sunday night, just how much I appreciate what you and Lou did and stepping into that. You didn't even really know what you were stepping into, but just, I love that you didn't even think about it. You were just like, yep, I'm in, let's do it, let's go. You know, I love that about, cause I'm very similar. Lewis Howes is the one who asked me to go to something very similar out in Los Angeles, MITT. And I didn't know what I was signing up for. I just said, yep, if you think it's going to be benefiting me, I trust you, like, I'm in, you know. And man, did that change my life as well. Right. So again, I give you the major props of just having the courage to say yes to life. And look how much it's already blessed you and those that you work with, you know, bless me. So
yeah. Well, and thank you. And then thank you, grandfather or Godfather, Lewis Howes.
Yeah.
That dude's awesome.
Yeah. He's a good dude for sure. And so I'm just following in the footsteps of those that are bigger than me. Right. So
me too, man.
It's all good. Well,
thanks for leaving the trail.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you. This will be the first of many, I think, podcasts that we'll have with you on. And I think as we continue to do the work and dig in, there's going to be a lot of opportunity to continue to bless the world. But again, if someone has listened to this and like, damn, like, I'm really, really struggling, and I they find points where they're really resonating with your story, what's a good way for them to contact you, follow you, all that good stuff?
Yeah, Zach Bloom, slide into my DMs. I think that's the best and fastest way right now. I'm building out all of my social media platforms currently. So, if you're listening to this in the future, it might be easier to find me there. But Zach Bloom, Bloom Roots is the name of my company. Because we work with sports teams as well, youth sports teams, as well as, individual one-on-one coaching and seminars. And I'm also in the middle of a huge content production gear up, basically. So like I said, I filmed my first podcast today. That'll be coming out soon. And I want to scream this stuff, from the rooftops, because you can do it for free. It's an inside job. Greatness is an inside job.
100%.
And I just want to give all the tools, so people can follow along and do it at home. And obviously, I make a living doing it because people want, the premium, package of one-on-one work or small group coaching, which I love doing. It makes my life better, and it's so amazing that it actually makes other people's lives better too, because of the work.
Right.
So yeah, that's the best way. Zach Bloom, that's Facebook, Bloom Roots Official on Instagram. Bloom Roots. Yeah.
Got it.
And by the way, your book is incredible. I'm going to go ahead and give you a little nudge right there. That's
Thanks.
yeah. I was to be honest, I was shocked. I was like, it's just rare to find a really good and in-depth. You're a great writer and you've got great content. Like, yeah, structure and content, man. It's incredible. So thank you for setting the bar high.
Thanks. I struggled through that, man. I struggled through that massively. So I'm grateful to hear that it has a positive impact. I've been kind of blown away because I thought it was going to, you just never know. Like, is it a test that you aced or is it a test that you flunked? I have no idea. But I'm glad it's over. And,
yeah.
That's honestly how I felt.
Yeah. Author Johnny King. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that very much. Because who knows, where that'll go. And I'm excited to read yours whenever you get yours, out there. Cause I'm sure you've got many books within you.
Well, just getting started.
Yeah, but, it's all good. It's all good. Well, thank you, man. And thank you guys for listening, for watching on YouTube, whichever platform you're dialing in on. But I would highly encourage you to follow my man, Zach Bloom. You said Bloom Roots, Zach Bloom.
Yep, it'll be both. Yeah, we're still figuring out some of those things. Slide into my DMs and connect, especially if you or somebody that is going through a really rough time. I'm working on creating something for addicts and alcoholics that is completely free to help them get better connected as they're going through a 12-step program, as kind of like a piggyback kind of thing. What I found is, like, I was trying to give this stuff away for free, and the only people that would take it were people that were dying. And everybody else, I think you have to leverage that with how else do they understand value? So yeah, I just want to push this stuff out as much as possible. So if you're having an addiction issue, connect with me and I'll get you connected. I'm happy to have coffee with people one-on-one and things like that. I keep time blocked out in my schedule to do that because it was freely given to me.
That's amazing. Freely receive, freely give, right? So
that's right. That's right,
man.
Brother.
Well, thank you so much for joining. Thank you guys for listening. Look forward to catching up with you on another episode of the Becoming Kings podcast. Thanks for joining. We'll catch up soon. Cheers.